of Washington is in the midst of its inevitable decline. It's what happens to a state when you have a bunch of progressives running it. Today's headline, Washington tumbles to number 45 in 2026 State Tax Competitiveness Index. Yeah, one of the reasons people used to move to Washington State was that we were so pro-business. Well, you got to pay for all those social programs with something, so let's tax the businesses. How's that working out? Not that great. Let's get into it. Here we go. You're going to see more and more and more of these drops in indexes for Washington State. Affordability, housing, we basically copy California. It's not that hard to figure out. Terrible policy in California is mimicked here in Washington State. And then people will go, you know what? You just really ruined a great state. It's got such pretty geography, but the policies are just all left up. And it's so true. You got a bunch of progressive ideology that doesn't work. California has absolutely proven it doesn't work. But let's rinse, repeat, and we'll just see what happens, right? Let's take a look at the State Competitiveness Index. What does that even mean? Washington is ranked the 45th worst overall state for tax competitiveness. According to the Tax Foundation's 2026 Tax Competitiveness Index, the low ranking places the Evergreen State among the 10 least competitive states in the nation, largely due to its business and occupation tax structure. Weird. You got to get your income from somewhere, so you tax business. You got the whole, I throw in there tax Amazon concept, but it's not just Seattle, it's the whole state. And then you end up with high sales tax on business inputs and recent tax increases in the occupation tax, all making Washington undesirable for businesses to be here, for people to be here, for employees to be here, for employers to be here. People are looking at other states and going, it's so expensive here in Washington State. Why would I be here when I can be somewhere else? Texas, Florida. Washington, D.C.-based Tax Foundation evaluates how well each state structures its tax system to promote competitiveness. Washington was the second worst state in terms of decline in the Tax Foundation's rankings. That's one of those things that I think is, the decline of Washington is going to be rapid because we've got so many social programs and we spend so much money on a governmental basis that we don't have. And yet because, we're so progressive, this is going to be so great, this is going to be awesome, what could go wrong? Well, we've just watched California and we're watching in real time. Oregon is already hosed. Washington State, we've got a little bit more tech going on here. So we can, our demise is going to take a little bit longer. But when you start going after big business and you start going after wealthy people, they tend to pick up and leave, kind of like Jeff Bezos, right? Key findings for Washington in the study included corporate taxes. State was ranked 47th due to its B&O tax, gross receipt imposed on revenue rather than profit. Okay? Sales tax. Washington ranked number 49 as the taxes applied to an unusual share of business inputs, including some digital products. We are taxing the F out of everything now. The only thing Washington doesn't have is a state income tax. But one's coming. It's a coming. Guaranteed it's a coming. So folks that are thinking about retiring, Washington State, especially if you're a couple of years out, Washington State is not where you want to do that. It's just not, because whatever fixed income you've got is just going to be wildly eroded by all of these taxes that are going to be needed to keep all these ridiculous amounts of programs in place because of terrible progressive ideology, right? The individual income taxes. Tax Foundation ranked Washington number 31. Although the state has no general income tax on wages, recent implementation of a 9.9 capital gains tax for high earners caused its ranking to decline by spots. Okay, I mean, you got to pay for this stuff somehow. You got to pay for all those criminal illegals' health care. You got to pay for this. You got to pay for that. More housing. We just need more housing, right? And we're certainly not paying for cops. We're not doing that. Oh, hell no. Law enforcement? Who gives an F about that? We don't really need police. It'll be fine. What could go wrong? Unemployment insurance taxes. Washington was ranked number 49, indicating a high and uncompetitive UI tax structure. Property taxes. State's number 25 ranking, it's kind of in the middle. It was a relatively average position compared to other states. We do not have incredibly expensive property taxes here. We've got some assessed values that have just, gone to the moon, but that's pretty typical for West Coast, Best Coast. Our property taxes have accordingly. But relative to the assessed value and the ratio and how we're compared to other states, property taxes aren't the worst. But I'm sure that'll change. I'm sure we'll get some kind of thing that'll make it just, you go up crazy. Study also notes that Washington now has a sales tax on digital advertising. I mean, why wouldn't we? And other business purchases of digital products took effect in October. Because you know what they're doing? They're coming up with progressive ideas of how to raise revenue. We hear, let's go Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago. We hear him talk incessantly about progressive revenue. And all that means is just taxing the F out of businesses and wealthy people. And then because those people and those businesses have options, they tend to leave. How many thousands of businesses have you had leave Illinois because of this absolute nonsense right here? Thousands and thousands. California, same drill. Same drill. Hey, what's going to happen if we just tax our constituents 10 ways to Sunday? Will they just sit still and take it? Oh, they won't? Oh, good Lord. So many of them left that now we got to tax some more stuff to pay for what they, left as far as where they're going to plug those holes. Washington faces a projected $2 billion funding gap in the 2026 supplemental budget. You know what I haven't heard once is, hey, let's cut this. Let's cut that. Let's cut this. Let's cut that. We can cut this. Remember when Trump did that with Doge, with Elon Musk, and everybody got so upset about actually cutting things, about taking unnecessary expenses. So, like meditation classes for male prostitutes in Zimbabwe. Just absolute harebrained stuff like that you're like, how did that? And I made that up, by the way. But, it sounds about as meaningful as half the stuff that was on those Doge lists. They're all a bunch of trans nonsense and gay and just stuff that, not really all that necessary to be funding that outside of the United States. Fund the United States first and then go work on your little charity projects, but not to the tune of billions of dollars. So we're pretty close to dead last in state tax competitiveness. How else does Washington rank? Washington's affordability crisis fuels out-migration in 2025. That's weird. Didn't see that one coming. Yeah, the exact same things that are happening in other big blue liberal states, big blue progressive states that have been run by progressives. And we've had Democratic control here in Washington state for like 35 years. So you can imagine how well that's gone, because it's like in New York City electing Mamdani. I mean, what kind of harebrained idea was that? You know what I mean? Just absolutely brain dead. Brain dead. But it's like these mayors, hey, we've got all these businesses here and they make a lot of money. Let's absolutely go after them, and they'll sit still. They'll just take it, right? Oh, they won't? Oh, they're moving. Oh, Amazon's going to Bellevue? Where I am, yeah. But they don't have a choice, because ideologically, they can't cut anything from these really important programs, whatever it may be. We've got some harebrained stuff going on in Washington state, just like Oregon does, just like any big blue progressive state. Just a bunch of nonsense that isn't necessary And then, you're stuck with, oh, we need more taxes because we got to pay for a bunch of stuff that's absolutely unnecessary. But we're just going to do it anyway because that's what Democrats do. That's what progressives do. The 2025 PODS Moving Trends Report paints a stark picture of Washington State's affordability crisis. Seattle and surrounding areas ranking among the top regions Americans are fleeing in 2025. Not a shocker at all. It's become so unaffordable here. And just our gasoline alone, we are neck and neck with California. Both subjected to absolute harebrained nonsense with fossil fuels, right? Oh, we won't have any more cars be sold beyond 2035 that are gas. And it's like, no, that was a terrible idea because you just simply can't make that happen. All this ideology just absolutely tanks these economies and states because too many people and their businesses leave. Based on PODS long-distance move data from January 24 to March 25, the report highlights a troubling trend. I have concern over this troubling trend, right? Usually that means a shenanigan is coming. High costs are driving residents out of Washington to more affordable regions like the Carolinas and Tennessee. I talk about the Carolinas all the time. Tennessee is on my very, very short list of places that I would like to retire. Just because I like the idea of, volunteer state and kind of what it's got going on. And it's just wildly different than Washington. Don't worry. I won't bring my ridiculous progressive ideology with me because I don't have any. I've lived it here in Washington State and I've seen how bad it is, what it can do policy-wise, and I want nothing to do with it. Sign me up for some Republican-led leadership. This out-migration signals a failure of state policies to address the escalating costs of living, particularly in housing, taxes, and everyday expenses like gasoline. We've got high utility costs, housing costs, crazy, absolutely crazy what it costs to meme I saw this morning, somebody I follow on Instagram, and he was showing just a clip of, with clown music, he was showing just a clip of what $1 million Seattle neighborhood looks like. And it's literally like little cracker box post-war housing. You know what I mean? Like 1950, single story with an unfinished basement, one car detached basement garage, one car attached basement garage. And that's $1 million home in Seattle, and you're left with, that's it? That looks like a teardown, and it probably is. But it's $1 million, if not $1.1 million, $1.2 million in Seattle. So 20 cities with the highest number of move-outs ranked. Seattle, number 12. Who do we follow? LA, Northern California, Southern Florida, Long Island, San Diego, Central Jersey, Chicago, Boston, Hudson Valley, Denver. I mean, just a litany, with the exception of South Florida, Miami area, a litany of progressive ideology. People are leaving. They are taking off from. How about this? Report ranks 36 for best, Washington 36 for best states to live in 2025, as Idaho goes to number 2. And we're right next to, so how can you have best, almost, not worst, but 36? Washington used to always be in the top. And it's because you've got ideology, you've got progressive ideology that is literally running the state into the ground. But hey, let's double down on it. Let's just keep this going because, if we just do this a little bit longer, things are really going to turn around. Right? I mean, that's literally in real time what's going on. Same thing with Mamdani in New York City. Hey, socialism has never worked before. It's never worked. There's never been an example of a thriving, any kind of entity under socialism or communism. But let's just go ahead and elect some guy in New York City that has zero experience on anything. And he's going to bring in a bunch of socialist policies. Let's just see how this goes. Should be great. Get out that popcorn, right? Podcasts for days. So Idaho, right next to Washington. Second, Washington State, 36. What kind of leadership does Idaho have? Oh, yeah. Is it progressive? No. I was in Idaho this past summer for a wedding. Man, they run a tight ship there. They really run a tight ship there. There's just no nonsense. There's none of this blue hair, people with nose rings, just, I'm not sure if I'm a man or a woman. You know what I mean? None of that. No shenanigans like that. Everything's pretty well laid out. Kind of know what you're getting. Even when you go into the grocery store, you kind of feel like you step back 25 years into a time where people actually are from the community and they've lived in the community forever because they have, and they like their community and they don't want to see it go absolutely sideways like so many communities in Washington State have. So you got Washington 36 for best to live in. New Wallet Hub report ranked Washington as the 36th best state. Now, when you're doing those numbers, you might as well go to worst, right? With Idaho landing second, much of the West Coast fell below the bottom half of the charts. West Coast, best coast. Yep. With California at 32nd and Oregon at 39th. West Coast used to be the American dream, right? California, go west, young man, go west. Not anymore. You've got out-migration. And in California, particularly out-migration, not enough people having babies and not enough people moving in. Just not moving in, and they're not having kids because it's too darn expensive. Washington State, we are right behind that happening. So rapid growth in Seattle and other cities and a few decades ago outpaced the development of infrastructure, creating issues. Lack of infrastructure paired with booming population makes it challenging to manage crime. That's not it. It's ideology. It's progressive ideology. Is why they can't manage crime, affordability, the costs are baked in. Any big progressive city and any progressive state, you've got all these costs baked in because they get so worked up over protecting the consumer, and they just layer in layer after layer after layer of nonsense, causes the price of whatever to go to the moon. Look at California's gasoline. Look at Washington's gas tax. I mean, it's never ending, right? So you got affordability and availability of services. Washington boasts a strong economy. So does California, fifth largest in the world, based on GDP, if it was its own country. But it's also got massive population, right? Washington State doesn't have massive population like California, but Washington also faces a ballooning budget because we are paying for so much progressive nonsense. Just a bunch of nonsense that we don't need. Look, progressives are like, oh yeah, we got to pay for that. We got to pay for that, pay for that. It's maddening. But Republicans here in Washington State, it's one of the reasons I would leave, don't have a voice. We have no voice. There is no reason here in Washington State that people are just, yeah, blue hair is great. Yeah. Am I a man or a woman? I don't really know. And the lowest number of law enforcement officers per capita nationwide. Lowest number of law enforcement officers per capita nationwide. Recipe for disaster. And yet, we are famous for defund the police at Chop and Chaz. Because what could go wrong? Well, 2 black young men could have their lives taken. 2 young black men at a Black Lives Matter takeover were murdered. That's what can go wrong. So this whole ideology of, defund the police, greatest concept ever. No, actually not at all. Just like socialism won't work, defund the police also won't work. Because when you don't have anything to put that money into and you get rid of the police, that's when you have, let's call it, the purge, right? Washington lags behind Idaho, primarily because of its higher cost of living, poor housing affordability, higher property taxes. These are all policy driven, right? Higher property taxes, higher crime rates, because we've got that whole, justice reform is going to be the greatest thing ever. It's just an entire shenanigan. Need to start locking people up again. Lock them up. Lock them up. Higher crime rates, fewer law enforcement employees per capita, more traffic congestion, lower road quality, and lower rankings in education, and some health metrics. So what does Washington rank ahead of Idaho in? Is there anything? I don't know. Right? I mean, yeah. This one's interesting. Idaho and Washington both rank high regarding income growth, first and fourth on the list. But what's setting the Evergreen State behind is falling in dead last for safety and 36th in terms of affordability. Dead last for safety. Washington State, the most dangerous state in all of the land. You imagine? I mean, and it didn't used to be that way. We were not on any of those metrics, but because we're so progressive and we decided, you know what? Let's just allow the pimps and the hoes to do their thing on Aurora. Let's allow the whacked out homeless to just roam the streets. Anybody that's on drugs can steal from whatever community they're in. They can steal from stores. And then when the stores close down, we'll be all fake worked up about, oh, we've got a food desert. Been covering that. It's like, what a bunch of numbnuts. You guys created policy where people can just steal willy-nilly from the community, and then you get worked up that a store leaves? You know what I mean? You're brain dead, right? You are brain dead. These are all policy-driven things that have been, just carpet bombed throughout Washington State for years and years and years because progressives think that just, give it more time, give it more money, and we'll get there. How's that working out, Washington? How's that working out? Safety? What number were we? Dead last? Oh, yeah. Dead last. Oregon, right next door, has some of the worst mental health care in the United States. Dead last. Dead last. Highest rates of homelessness. Why? Policy. Build it and they will come. We built the homeless industrial complex. People came. All of these things are policy driven, just like Mondani in New York City. Let's just go ahead and give socialism one more try. It's kind of like the progressive ideology. If we just had enough money, if we just had enough time, we could build more housing and things would become affordable. No, that's not how this game works. Based on capitalism. Capitalism doesn't work that way. But you wouldn't know because you're trying to do it the socialist way. What I always say is you can either be glass half full or glass half empty. I'm going to have podcasts for the rest of my career because none of this is going away. It's baked into society. It's here. We're going to be talking about it. It's not going to get better. Get out that popcorn and make sure you're subscribed. Hit that notification bell, share with friends and family. Thanks in advance, and I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.